Hi, we will be starting soon, but we have a question to ask. Can we stain a canvas without disturbing a graphite transfer? Okay, so let's see. Okay, here we have a canvas board, and as you can see, it's been pre-stained. It's been pre-stained in a random way. You see all these blots and marks and texture that's on the surface. It's not a uniform look, and that's deliberate because this canvas here is intended for a painting of the Costa Rican rainforest, possibly a quetzal bird here. It was a very shiny green bird. The equivalent would be if you look at the mallard, a duck that's familiar to us in the UK. The green sheen that's on its head is typical of the vast majority of the quetzal bird. And so this canvas board has been stained so that the background would be easier to create a organic, natural kind of rainforest appearance. Okay. However, this is the canvas here that we're going to be using. This one here. And we need to stain it accordingly. The image has been transferred onto this board using graphite. Now, what I need to do is look at our learning intention is to stain a canvas board using Artisan water mixable oil paint and thinner. Well, naturally, the idea should be that it is perfectly possible. However, the question is that graphite is soluble. So if we use water or thinner, will that affect the graphite layer and then subsequently affect the staining that we try to put on it? So, let's see. As we rotate this image, there we go. That's better. We can see it a lot better. The image has been transferred. And is composed of graphite. We embossed this graphite into the weave of the canvas board, and it should stay. But because graphite can dissolve, will it dissolve with this treatment? Let's look at our success criteria. Our success criteria for this piece would be let's see. Thin the oil paint that we're about to transfer as a stain with water or thinner. Apply it to the surface and remove the excess material. And that's going to be easy enough. But again, let's rotate the image. Round. There we go. And bring it in. So here we are. Canvas stain the canvas board with Artisan water mixable oil paint and thinner. Well, you would think that if it was the oil paint is able to be thinned with water, then water would be sufficient. So why would they have a thinner? There is a rumour, as we transition over into the demo class, here we are, just coming in, that if we just mix it with water, it dries very quickly. If we mix it with thinner, it dries slower and is workable for a longer period of time. So let's give it a go and see. Here we go. Here we have the Artisan thinner. I've been using this quite a lot and enjoy it. And some ordinary tap water. Now the problem with tap water for me is that we don't know what the constituent chemicals are that are in our water. Now as a brewer, I know that you can get a water survey or a water report. You can request one, and that will tell you what mineral elements are in your drinking or tap water. It would be perhaps more worthwhile to use bottled water, and that way you can check. So the colours that I'm going to use are, I have burnt umber here, and raw umber, as you can see. And a very lovely olive green. Now, since my desire is to paint hummingbirds, I find that olive green is a very useful colour indeed. When you're using these oil paints, be aware of their viscosity. So you'll see that when they came out the tube, the raw umber and the burnt umber were very juicy, but here, this olive green was a little reluctant to spread. So I'm going to go in with water first. This brush that I'm using is a Rosemary & Co. Tree and Texture brush from Series 32. There's a good amount there. And I'm diluting this quite finely. For me, this is a very natural green. I like this green. But I sense a little reluctance from it to actually mix. So here we go. just thinned using water. As we apply it, you can see that it's fairly dark. I think that's lovely. I think it's a really nice green. It's diluted to such an extent that it's transparent. There is a question mark over how much water do you use, or how diluted can the paint be before its ability to adhere to the surface is compromised. Well, this paint has been heavily diluted, and heavily diluted on previous canvases. For instance, this one here, I use raw umber and olive. There's the umber, and you can see the olive colour. It's been applied to the surface and then wiped off. So here you can see it's fairly heavily diluted. The drawing is unaffected by it, is visible through the glaze, if we're going to use that expression. It's still visible. I can see there's areas of the canvas that are resisting the staining. It's just moving away. So I'm going to bring in a little bit more of the paint. See if that helps. And as I do so, the graphite underdrawing is not so clear, but still visible. Okay. I'm not worried about the cleanliness of the water, because these the result that I want is a stained surface. So I'm not particularly concerned about if the colours mix with each other or are influenced by each other. Oop. That's quite strong. I'm going to thin it down a little bit more. So even by combining them, I get varieties of tint, tone, colour, strength. The uniformity of colour is not something that I'm actually looking for. I'm going to bring in some more green in here. Yes, and they go very nicely together. And again, I use just water on the raw umber, heavily diluted. This brown is a much cooler brown than the burnt umber. Very heavily diluted. And back into the green. Okay. And all I'm going to do is coat the surface with a combination of these different colours. Trying to respect what I know is going to happen in the painting later on. That's very, very dark. But according to the literature and the things that I've seen online, by using just water, the paint is going to dry relatively quickly. Okay. So now I'm going to use the Artisan thinner. It says it's non-toxic, low odor. I haven't had a problem with it myself, and I have sensitivity to spirits and solvents. I'm going to switch from this Rosemary & Co. Tree and Texture brush from series 32 to this brush here, which is also Rosemary & Co. I do like their brushes. It's a limited edition smooshing brush, which is designed for basically blending. It's limited edition because they made a mistake when they created it. They got the sizes and components wrong somehow, and sold them off as a little batch. I was curious about them because I was really interested in how blending would work with oils. As a brush, that just sits really nicely in the hand. I'm trying to respect this is going to be a checkerboard, pretty much as I use in most of my Elassomorph paintings. There's invariably a checkerboard somewhere, a chessboard with black and white. But this black is built up of French ultramarine blue and raw umber. So when you glaze them on top of each other, they optically colour mix. And create a black. Okay, back into the thinner. Now, according to the literature, the thinner should be more slow drying. There's some raw umber. Back into the mix. Should be more slow drying. And also have less problems with adhesion with greater dilution. Now, I've used up most of my green. I do like that green olive. So I'll just continue with this smooshing brush, coating the surface. Before I lift out with tissue or a rag. I'm reluctant to spoil that white, but I know that I can reintroduce it because titanium white and to a lesser extent zinc white are slightly more opaque. And so I can use those two whites, probably titanium white a little bit more, as a kind of Tipex to reintroduce the white of the canvas board. I'm doing this experiment for my own interest as well because I'm not 100% sure how it's going to react. For instance, I've left this pigment and the water on the surface for a period of time while I've dealt with this other area, and so it's had a chance to soak into the board. And I'm beginning to wonder for myself how that's going to affect the staining when I wipe off with some tissue. Let me remind you that the top half was treated with water. The bottom half uses the same colours but diluted with thinner. Well, so far I can see that it's staining quite nicely. I'm not really worried about uniformity. That's okay. For me, the surface is stained. It's no longer pure white. That will help me assess the tones and the values of the colours that I'm going to be using later on in the painting. So, for me that's okay. Bottom half is with the thinner. It's had slightly less time to soak into the surface. From my own point of view, it seems to be spreading much more nicely. It's giving a slightly more uniform coating, if that's what you're after. It's lifting out nicely. Both are. The water area and the solvent area are lifting out quite nicely. What I'm not happy with are the areas like this, the grease spots. Let me transition over. Yeah. The grease spots on this, which have resisted the thinned oil paint here. We can see a light patch here and up here as well. I'm less satisfied with those areas than the majority of the rest. But in terms of staining, I'm quite happy with that. Let's go back to our learning intention. To stain a canvas board using Artisan water mixable oil paint and thinner. Well, the thinner we used on the top half was water. And that feels as if it's drying quite quickly. The bottom half with the thinner seems to be drying much more slowly. It's cooler to the touch. generally feels damp. But both, remember the water is free, the thinner costs. Both have done the job of staining the canvas but allowing the drawing to show through. Where the staining has been blotchy, the drawing is of course less legible. That said, every part of it is visible. The stain is largely transparent. The cartoon of the drawing transferred can be seen at close range. This little detail here of the guitar and the waterfall cascade is compromised a little bit, but can still be seen. Yeah, all the details are visible. And I'm sure as each component part is blocked in, it'll become more legible. Let's look at our success criteria again. Let's bring those in. Our success criteria. To thin with water or thinner. Apply to the surface and remove the excess. Well, it is possible to do both. At this early stage, I can see no difference between that which was applied with the water and that of the thinner. I know that the thinner is taking more time to dry, but that's not a problem for me. It's not a problem for me that the water surface seems to have dried a lot more quickly. Yeah, this is cooler and damper down here. Because of my working methods, I work in small periods of time. And so I'm well prepared to wait till the following day for something like this to happen. The reason the channel is called Guitar Therapy is because music and art are ways that I help cope with my ME condition, and so I actually prefer to work in smaller bursts of time and smaller bursts of energy. So for me, this today is successful. I've managed to achieve what I wanted to achieve. Side by side with my previous one. Yep. This one here is more towards the umbers, the raw umber and the burnt umber. This one here is more towards the olive. Both of them have a staining which is less than uniform. It's kind of blotchy, but that lends itself to the subject that I'm interested in, which is, nature, wildlife, the jungle of Costa Rica in particular. This one was stained, and the image is going to be transferred on top. That works. This one The image was transferred from a drawing created during a live stream, and then the staining was put on top of the drawing. It works equally as well. Both are, for me, a success. Let's have a look at the demo class. Here we go. Yep. We can see the mixing palette. The colors are all Artisan water mixable. We've used olive green, burnt umber, and raw umber. We've allowed them to combine on the mixing palette to the right of my work surface. The top half of the picture here, diluted with water, has dried already. I can feel that. With thinner, is still in the process of drying, so it's slowed down the drying time, and for some people that might be an advantage. But it's all transparent, and it will be ready tomorrow for the next stage. Let's look at our beginning question. Are we able to answer this? Can we stain a canvas without disturbing a graphite transfer? Well, put simply, we suspected it would be the case. Yes, we can do it. Graphite is soluble in water. However, in this instance, it's not, with it being embedded into the canvas board through the process of embossing. Perhaps it has become part of the weave, but certainly I can't see any diminution in the strength of the drawing. Staining has worked. The drawing has not been compromised. Whether we're using water or thinner at this stage has not had a significant bearing on the outcome. And so I think we can say, yes, it is possible. It is possible to stain a canvas without disturbing a graphite transfer. And that is up to the artist to decide whether or not they prefer to lay down the drawing first and stain, or do the staining first and put the drawing on top. We have options here. Thank you for joining me. I hope this has been useful to you and encourages you in your creativity. Thank you. And I hope to see you for the next live stream.